So the chicken just finished in the slow cooker. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out, shred it up, and then put it back in so that it can simmer in the seasonings again. Because next thing we need to do is put the onions on and then caramelize them beforehand. You really want to do this before adding the chicken because you'll either burn the chicken or you won't actually get the onions to caramelize. The flavor's a lot better when you caramelize them first instead of just putting the onions in raw essentially so that they can cook. So I'll go ahead and get that done now and then we'll start on the rest of it. Just be careful you don't burn yourself when taking these out because they'll be hot. Same with when you boil them. If I can even grab them. So we'll go ahead and shred these apart and then we'll put them back in. The nice thing about using the slow cooker is that it makes them very tender, so they're a lot easier to shred than normal. So now that this is done, we just put it back in and then get started on the onions. So for this next part, we're going to be cooking our onions and the garlic together before putting the chicken in. So let me go ahead and get those out again. I like using the cast iron just because it's nicer when you're cooking stuff on the stove top. So we need 3 tablespoons of butter to get this going. So once again, we're going to guess how much butter we need. So there's our 3 tablespoons. I'm going to go ahead and throw our onions in and then we'll just kind of stir it up and make sure that they get a nice color to them. Also, a thing to note for this part is that the butter is just for cooking these, so we don't need to be exact with the measurements, which makes it a little easier. I think these are pretty much there. So we'll go ahead and throw the garlic in and let that cook for about a minute or so longer. And then we'll be ready for the chicken. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off the skillet for now. That way I can mix in the other stuff without it burning anything. Or take it off the burner, I mean. So next we'll be adding our chicken in and then mixing in the hot sauce and continuing to cook it. The recipe calls for a half cup of Frank's Red Hot, but personally I like using Sweet Baby Ray's buffalo wing sauce just because buffalo is a lot better than regular hot sauce, and I've never had any issues with anything that this brand's made so far. I've liked everything I've had from them. So we'll go ahead and get a half cup of this. remember that instead of using rotisserie chicken, we've used the regular chicken that we shredded ourselves, so it's going to be a lot more dry. So because of that, we're going to start with the half cup, but we will continue to cook it. You'll see it kind of absorbs it up and gets dry again, so just keep adding until it gets a better liquid consistency, because you don't want the chicken to be dry. We'll go ahead and measure this out. I'll set that off to the side because I want to put the chicken in first. There was still a lot of water in the chicken, so I had to drain it out first. So I'm just going to put in however much I can so that it doesn't overfill it. Because I was just guessing on how much chicken I needed. So I guess we'll go ahead and see where this goes. Oh, before I forget, I got to turn the stovetop back on. I think that was exactly enough. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and start mixing this together again. So like I said before, this is just the starting point for how much sauce we need. It'll probably take a lot more than this, but we'll see where we are. Also at this point, if the sauce isn't enough, if it's still pretty dry, you can add a little bit of olive oil in there too, because olive oil helps it to not stick together too much. So you can see this was barely enough. What the goal here is to make all of the chicken have this nice orange color, just like the sauce. That's how you know you've got a good amount on there, because it'll cook off as you're stirring too. So I'm going to try and measure some out. That way I at least have a guess of how much I need. Let's put another half cup in. Yeah, this looks a lot better. I still could use more. Let's try another half cup. It's not too big of an issue if you use too much, because you can just drain it out in the end. This looks like a good amount of sauce, so I'm going to finish cooking this up and then we'll get started on the rest of it. So this is pretty much done. The recipe says to cook it until it comes to a simmer and then take it off the heat, but I like cooking it just a little bit longer so that the chicken gets a bit of crispness on the underside of it too. So now that we've finished the chicken, the next thing we need to do is prepare the bell peppers. So first we need to turn the oven on to 400. We'll get out our cookie sheet here. Now originally I said I wasn't going to use the olive oil on the bell peppers, but I'll do it this time just to demonstrate that you can and how to do that. Let me make sure you can actually see. Yeah, that's better. So it doesn't matter what order you put these in. They just have to be somewhere. So you'll take your olive oil. Now I'm just going to pour some out and then use my hand to wipe it on. because the instructions say you drizzle it, but so if you do want to put this on, it helps with preventing the peppers from drying out too much, but it's not that big of a deal because they're full of water, so they'll stay pretty good even after baking in the oven for 20 minutes. So what I'm doing here is I'm just painting it on. That way we're putting on just a small amount of olive oil, so they're not too oily, but they still have a olive oil coating, which is what the recipe wants. And speaking of olive oil, has anyone ever wondered why it's extra virgin olive oil? Why do the olives have to be virgins? You ever wonder that? So now we just need to put some salt and pepper on these, and then we put the chicken in. If I can even see where I'm aiming this. Ears. This one comes out a lot faster. There. Now all we do is we put our chicken in, and then we get out our Gouda cheese. We put that on top, and then these go into the oven. Let me see if I can actually... It's still pretty warm, but I should be able to just put it in. Put a little too much salt in that one. So you want to put a good amount in each one of these. Don't put too much, just because it'll be hard to eat them if there's too much chicken inside. But you also don't want them to be too empty either. There. So we have a good amount in each one. Then we're going to get the cheese out and put that on top, and then put these into the oven. Having leftover chicken is good because you can just eat the chicken by itself because it's pretty good. You can also eat the bell peppers by themselves if you run out of chicken, but it's just whatever you want, I guess. Last but not least, now that we've got the chicken in, the last thing we need to do is top it with the Gouda cheese. So let me go ahead and get that out. So here I have some smoked Gouda. That's our favorite that goes on this. You see it's got like a skin on the outside, but you actually put that in there with it. You don't peel the skin off. So I'll go ahead and get this open, and then we can start putting that on. And then that's it. We'll go ahead and get these reorganized first so that they look nicer. So you have a few choices when topping this. We originally did the thin shredded cheese, but actually what I like the best is the thick shredded, because when that cooks, it leaves a little crispy cheese layer on top, which when you shred it thinly, it doesn't really do that as much. So I like doing it that way. You can do it whichever, it doesn't matter, but just a preference I have. So we'll go ahead and put some of these on. If I can actually get it to go on the cheese. You want a good amount on top, that way it can melt down and make a layer, because that's what your goal is. Now I can just pick up the excess and put that back on so I don't waste too much of it. Another method is just to shred it into a bowl and then you put it on by hand, which that makes it easier. I just forgot to do that. So we'll go ahead and get these in the oven now. very slowly so I don't spill them. Because they can tip over easily. There we go. Now, 20 to 25 minutes. I'll put them in for 20 and then you can see they start getting done once you see the cheese getting crispy on top. So, I'll see you then. Well, this is a little bit over 20 minutes. You can see how the top of the cheese got crispy. So that covers everything for making buffalo chicken stuffed bell peppers. I really hope you enjoy these as much as I do because I absolutely love these. Now, before I forget, the last thing we need to top these off is our blue cheese dressing. You can use either blue cheese or ranch. The recipe calls for ranch. I like blue cheese just because it's a little bit different. But this is basically a dipping sauce that goes on the side for them. So you can it adds to the flavor. It's good. So don't forget to have this if you want it. I also have some rice I'll be making on the side. You don't really need a side for this, but I already showed you how to make rice. I don't need to do it again. But I mean, if you forgot, it's just, I hate rice. Simmer covered. Close enough.